The Velan sovereignty had ruled the Orion Spur for 3,000 years. 12 species worked together under one government. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had defeated every enemy. They believed they understood how the universe worked. The strong ruled. The weak served. This was the natural order of things. When their scouts discovered humanity, the sovereignty saw nothing special. Humans lived on one small planet called Earth. They had only recently learned to travel between stars. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow and ugly. The sovereignty had seen species like this before. They were usually conquered within a decade. High Admiral Corveth commanded the diplomatic fleet sent to assess Earth. He brought 15 cruisers with him. This was not a war fleet. It was simply an escort, a show of strength. He expected the humans to bow immediately once they saw sovereignty power. The humans did not bow. Corveth met with human leaders on a station orbiting their moon. The meeting did not go well. The humans refused standard tribute agreements. They rejected protectorate status. They actually demanded to be treated as equals. Corveth found this amusing at first. Then he found it insulting. These creatures had one system, one planet of any value. They had been traveling between stars for less than 2 centuries, and they dared to speak to him as equals? The breaking point came on the 3rd day of negotiations. A human diplomat named Chen looked Corveth directly in the eyes. Among Corveth's species, this was a challenge, a threat. Chen did not know this. She was simply being direct, as humans often were. But Corveth had already decided. These humans needed a lesson. He ended the negotiations and returned to his fleet. Within hours, he ordered an attack on a human colony on Europa, one of the moons of a giant planet called Jupiter. The colony held 40,000 people, mostly scientists and miners. Civilians. 3 sovereignty cruisers bombarded the colony from orbit. The attack lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the colony was burning. Thousands were dead. The survivors sent desperate calls for help across all channels. Corveth expected terror. He expected surrender. He expected the humans to finally understand their place in the universe. He received a response within 6 hours. But it was not surrender. A single human ship emerged from behind Jupiter. It was enormous, much larger than Corveth had expected. The vessel was angular and blocky, without any of the elegant curves that sovereignty ships displayed. It looked crude, brutal, built for one purpose only. Corveth laughed when he saw it. One ship? The humans sent one ship against 15 cruisers? Perhaps they were even more foolish than he thought. The human ship was called the UES Consequence. Its captain was a woman named Sarah Okonkwo. She was 53 years old. She had served in Earth's defense forces for 30 years. She had never wanted war, but she understood it. Captain Okonkwo opened a channel to the sovereignty fleet. Her message was simple. You attacked our people. You killed our civilians. You will surrender now and submit to trial for war crimes. This is your only warning. Corveth did not even bother responding. He simply ordered his fleet to destroy the human vessel. 15 cruisers opened fire. Plasma beams and missiles streaked toward the Consequence. The sovereignty weapons were powerful. They had destroyed countless enemy ships. Any normal vessel would have been torn apart in seconds. The Consequence was not a normal vessel. The ship's shields absorbed the first volleys. They flickered and sparked but held firm. Then the human ship began to move. It accelerated faster than anything that size should have been able to move. It dove straight into the sovereignty formation. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The Consequence carried weapons the sovereignty had never seen before. Railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Energy weapons that cut through shields like they were not there. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves, hunting down targets and adjusting course to avoid countermeasures. But the weapons were not the worst part. The worst part was how the humans fought. Sovereignty tactics relied on formation. Ships worked together in precise patterns developed over centuries. They supported each other. They created overlapping fields of fire. This made them strong against enemies who fought the same way. Captain Okonkwo did not fight the same way. She took her single ship and used the sovereignty's formation against them. She flew close to one cruiser, so close that other ships could not fire without hitting their ally. She destroyed that cruiser at point-blank range, then used the explosion as cover to attack the next target. She never stopped moving. She never gave them a clear shot. She fought like a predator among prey, always finding the weak point, always striking where they could not defend. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, 12 sovereignty cruisers were destroyed. 2 more were crippled and drifting. Only 1 remained functional, and it had taken heavy damage. The consequence had been hit many times. Parts of the hull were torn open. Fires burned in several sections, but the ship still flew. Its weapons still worked. Captain Okonkwo still lived. She opened a channel to the surviving sovereignty ships. Your wounded will be collected and treated. Your dead will be returned to you with full honors. You will carry a message to your leaders. Corvith listened from an escape pod. His flagship was among the destroyed vessels. He had barely survived. Tell them this. Captain Okonkwo continued. We did not start this war. We do not want this war. But if you continue, we will finish it. The choice is yours. Human rescue ships arrived within hours. They collected every sovereignty survivor they could find. The wounded were taken to human medical stations and treated with surprising care. The humans did not torture prisoners. They did not execute them. They simply helped them, then sent them home. Corveth returned to sovereignty space 3 weeks later. He carried the human message to the High Council. He described the battle in detail. He warned them that the humans were more dangerous than anyone had expected. The council listened. Then they made their decision. 1 ship, they reasoned. The humans had 1 ship. Yes, it was powerful. Yes, it had defeated 15 cruisers. But it was still only 1 ship, and it had taken damage. Perhaps it was the only ship of its kind. Perhaps the humans had spent everything they had building it. The sovereignty would send a real fleet this time. 500 warships. Enough firepower to crack a planet. The humans would be crushed. Their world would be burned. Their species would serve as an example to any others who dared to resist. The orders went out. Fleets began gathering from across sovereignty space. The invasion would launch in 6 months. During those 6 months, sovereignty intelligence watched Earth carefully. They saw the consequence being repaired. They saw human shipyards working. But they saw no other ships like the consequence. They believed their assessment was correct. The humans had built 1 great weapon, spent all their resources on it, and now had nothing left. They were wrong. The humans had been building since first contact. They had seen the sovereignty fleets. They had studied sovereignty tactics. They understood what was coming, and they had prepared. On Earth, shipyards worked around the clock. Factories produced weapons and armor without stopping. Scientists developed new technologies with desperate speed. Every nation contributed. Every faction cooperated. Old rivalries were set aside. The human species had never been truly united before. Now they were. Captain Okonkwo spent those 6 months healing and training. Her crew had become heroes. The consequence had become a symbol. But she knew the truth. 1 ship could not defend Earth forever. They needed more. She visited the shipyards often. She watched the new vessels take shape. They were built on the same design as the consequence, but with improvements. Faster engines, stronger shields, more powerful weapons. Each ship was a fortress. By the time 6 months had passed, Earth had 11 ships like the consequence. 11 vessels designed for 1 purpose: to protect humanity from anything the universe could throw at them. The humans did not announce this. They did not boast or threaten. They simply waited. When sovereignty scouts reported the invasion fleet approaching, Captain Okonkwo gathered her fellow captains. 11 ships, 11 crews, thousands of humans who had volunteered to stand between their world and destruction. She gave them simple orders. They would meet the sovereignty fleet near Jupiter, the same place where the first battle had been fought. They would give the enemy 1 chance to turn back. If that chance was refused, they would fight. One of the younger captains asked what would happen if they lost. Okonkwo looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. If we lose, she said, then Earth will keep building, and the next fleet will be bigger, and the one after that will be bigger still. We will never stop. We will never surrender. They can kill us, but they cannot beat us. That is what it means to be human. The captains returned to their ships. The fleet moved into position, and they waited for the storm to arrive. Far away, 500 sovereignty warships entered human space. Their commanders were confident. Their crews were eager. They believed they were going to win an easy victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Sovereignty Armada entered the Sol system with absolute confidence. 500 warships moved in perfect formation. They stretched across millions of kilometers of space, a wall of metal and fire that had never known defeat. Fleet Admiral Thesson stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars ahead. Somewhere in this system, the humans waited with their single ship. Thesson was not a fool. He had studied the reports from the first battle. He knew the human vessel was dangerous, but one ship, no matter how powerful, could not stand against 500. This was simple mathematics. The humans had played their best card and lost. Now they would face the consequences. His intelligence officers had watched Earth for months. They had seen only the one ship being repaired. They had detected no others like it. The human shipyards were busy, yes, but building vessels of that size took years. The humans simply had not had enough time. The fleet passed the outer planets without incident. They approached the gas giant called Jupiter, where the first battle had taken place. Thesson ordered his ships to slow. If the humans wanted to make a stand, this would be the place. He was right. The UES Consequence appeared from behind one of Jupiter's moons. It looked exactly as the reports described: angular, brutal, scarred from the previous battle but fully repaired. The ship held position directly in the path of the Sovereignty fleet. Thesson opened a communication channel. Protocol demanded he offer surrender terms before attacking. This was tradition. This was proper. He did not expect the humans to accept, but the forms must be observed. Human vessel, he broadcast. You are outnumbered 500 to 1. Your system is surrounded. Your planet is defenseless. Surrender now and your population will be spared. Resist and you will be destroyed. This is your only chance. The response came from Captain Sarah Okonkwo. Her voice was calm, almost tired. Admiral, I gave your people a message 6 months ago. I told them we did not want this war. I told them we would finish it if they continued. They did not listen. So now I have a new message for you. Thesson waited. His tactical officers were tracking the human ship, calculating firing solutions, preparing for the order to attack. You were not listening, Okonkwo said. Let me make it clearer. The space behind Jupiter's moons lit up with engine flares. One ship appeared, then another, then another. 10 vessels emerged from hiding and took position alongside the Consequence. They were identical to the first ship. Same design, same weapons, same terrible purpose. 11 human warships faced the Sovereignty fleet. Thesson felt his confidence crack. This was not what intelligence had predicted. This was not possible. Where had these ships come from? How had the humans built them so quickly? But 11 ships were still not 500. The odds were still overwhelming. Thesson steadied himself. This changed nothing. The humans had more strength than expected, but they were still vastly outnumbered. All ships, he ordered. Prepare to engage. Captain Okonkwo watched the Sovereignty fleet begin its approach. She stood on the bridge of the Consequence, surrounded by officers she had served with for years. They had survived the first battle together. They would face this one together as well. Formation Alpha, she ordered. All ships acknowledge. 10 voices responded across the fleet channel. 10 captains confirmed they were ready. The human ships moved into a wedge formation, with the Consequence at the point. They did not fire first. They waited. The Sovereignty made the first move. Admiral Thesson ordered his forward elements to attack. 100 ships accelerated toward the human formation, weapons charging. They expected the humans to retreat or spread out. 11 ships could not hold against 100. The humans did not retreat. The 11 ships flew directly at the attacking force. They held their wedge formation, each ship protecting the others. When they entered weapons range, they fired together. The effect was devastating. Human railguns tore through Sovereignty shields. Energy beams cut ships in half. Missiles swarmed between the enemy vessels, picking off targets with terrible accuracy. The Sovereignty ships returned fire, but the human formation was designed to share damage. Shields overlapped. Ships covered each other's weak points. In the first 10 minutes, 37 Sovereignty ships were destroyed. The humans lost none. Admiral Thesson watched in disbelief. His tactical displays were filled with red icons marking destroyed vessels. The human ships moved through his fleet like wolves through sheep, always staying together, always supporting each other. He ordered more ships forward, 200 this time. They would surround the humans, attack from all sides, overwhelm them through sheer numbers. The humans adjusted their formation. They spread slightly, each ship taking a sector, but they never separated completely. When one ship took heavy damage, it fell back while others covered it. When shields failed, neighboring vessels extended their own shields to protect their ally. They fought like a single organism with 11 bodies. The battle raged for 3 hours. The sovereignty committed more and more ships, trying to break the human formation. They succeeded in damaging several human vessels. They even managed to destroy 2. But for every human ship lost, 50 sovereignty ships died. Captain Okonkwo felt the consequence shudder as another volley struck her shields. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Engine power reduced to 60%. Ammunition running low. She did not care. They were winning. The sovereignty fleet was breaking. Ships that had entered the battle with confidence were now trying to retreat. Their formation had collapsed. Their coordination had failed. Individual captains were making individual decisions, and those decisions were usually to run. Admiral Thassan screamed orders that no one followed. His flagship was damaged. His fleet was dying. This was not possible. This could not be happening. But it was. 4 hours into the battle, the sovereignty retreat became a rout. Ships fled in all directions, abandoning their comrades, abandoning their mission. They had come to destroy humanity. Instead, humanity had destroyed them. When the last enemy ships left weapons range, Captain Okonkwo ordered her fleet to hold position. They did not pursue. They did not fire on retreating enemies. They simply let them go. The humans had lost 2 ships, 900 crew members dead. It was a heavy price, but the sovereignty had lost 340 vessels. Tens of thousands of their people were dead or captured. The battlefield was filled with wreckage. Debris from both sides drifted together, mixing in the void. Human rescue ships launched immediately, searching for survivors. They found sovereignty escape pods and brought them aboard. They treated wounded enemies with the same care they gave their own people. Admiral Thesson was among those captured. He was brought to a human medical station where doctors treated his injuries. He expected torture. He expected execution. These were the normal fates of defeated commanders among the sovereignty's enemies. Instead, a human officer brought him food and water. She asked if he needed anything else. "Why?" Thesson asked. "Why are you helping me? I came to destroy your world." The officer shrugged. "You're hurt. We help people who are hurt. That's what we do." Thesson did not understand. He had spent his entire life in a universe where strength was everything, where the defeated served the victors or died. The humans had shown incredible strength in battle, but now they showed something else. Something he had no name for. Days later, Thesson and the other prisoners were released. They were given medical supplies and sent back to sovereignty space in their own ships. No conditions were attached. No demands were made. Captain Okonkwo broadcast one final message as the survivors departed. "Go home. Tell your leaders what you saw here. Tell them we did not want this fight, but we were ready for it. Tell them we are willing to talk. We are willing to find peace. But if they send another fleet, we will destroy that one too. And the next after that. We will never stop defending our home." The survivors carried her message back to sovereignty space. They described the battle in detail. They told of 11 ships that fought like one, of human weapons that cut through shields like paper, of a species that showed mercy to those who had tried to kill them. The Sovereignty High Council listened. They argued. They threatened. But underneath the anger, fear was growing. Their intelligence officers brought new reports. Long-range sensors had scanned the Sol system during the battle. What they found was terrifying. The 11 ships were not the end of human production. Construction yards orbited Earth. Dozens of ship frames were visible, in various stages of completion. Factories covered entire continents. Humans were building more ships, many more. If 11 vessels could destroy 340 sovereignty warships, what would 50 do? What would 100 do? The Council realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had seen a young species and assumed weakness. They had attacked and created an enemy. Now that enemy was growing stronger every day. Some members called for immediate peace negotiations. Others demanded a larger fleet. a coalition of all sovereignty species, an overwhelming force that would finally crush the humans. The arguments continued for weeks. While they argued, Earth kept building. Captain Okonkwo did not celebrate the victory. She mourned the dead. She visited the families of those who had been lost. She knew this was not the end. The sovereignty would return. They would bring more ships next time. But next time, humanity would be ready. More ships were launching every month. New weapons were being developed. The human species was learning to fight as one. She looked at the stars and wondered what the future would bring. War or peace? Destruction or cooperation? She did not know, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together, and they would not lose. Far away, in the halls of sovereignty power, a council member named Vreth watched the reports and worried. She had argued against the invasion. She had warned that the humans were different. No one had listened then. Perhaps they would listen now. She began to make plans. Someone needed to understand these humans. Someone needed to find a way to stop the killing before it consumed everything. She did not know if she could succeed, but she had to try. Counselor Vreth had served the sovereignty for over 60 years. She had seen wars begin and end. She had watched species rise and fall. She had believed, until recently, that she understood how the universe worked. The strong conquered, the weak submitted. This was the way of things. The humans had broken that understanding. She walked through the great halls of the council chamber, past towering statues of ancient heroes, past monuments to 1,000 victories. Everything here spoke of sovereignty, power, sovereignty, glory. But that power had been tested, and it had failed. 340 ships destroyed, tens of thousands dead, and the humans had lost only 2 vessels. The council was in chaos. Factions screamed at each other across the chamber. Some demanded peace. Others demanded total war. A few suggested pretending the whole thing had never happened and hoping the humans forgot about them. No one was listening to reason. Vreth returned to her private offices and began her research. If she wanted to stop this war, she needed to understand the enemy. She needed to learn what made humans different from every other species the sovereignty had faced. She started with the obvious: military records, tactical analyses, weapon specifications. The humans had superior technology in some areas, but not all. Their ships were powerful, but their numbers were small. Their tactics were innovative, but they could be studied and countered. None of this explained why they had won so decisively. She dug deeper. She accessed cultural databases, historical records, anything she could find about human society. What she discovered disturbed her more than any weapon. Humans had a strange relationship with violence. They were capable of terrible cruelty. Their history was filled with wars, genocides, atrocities that would shock any civilized species. But they were also capable of remarkable restraint. They built hospitals for enemies. They wrote laws to protect prisoners. They created entire organizations dedicated to helping strangers. They seemed to be 2 species in one, monsters and saints, living in the same bodies. More importantly, they did not conquer to rule. Every other spacefaring species the sovereignty had encountered expanded through conquest. They took territory, subjugated populations, extracted resources. This was natural. This was expected. Humans were different. They expanded through trade, through cooperation. They built relationships instead of empires. They shared technology instead of hoarding it. They seemed genuinely confused by the idea of conquering others for glory. But when threatened, everything changed. Vreth found records of human wars. Wars fought against incredible odds. Wars that should have been lost but were won through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. When humans believed their homes were in danger, they became something else entirely. They stopped fighting as individuals and became a single, unified force. The sovereignty had awakened that force. Vreth sat back in her chair and processed what she had learned. The humans were not a threat to be crushed. They were a force to be befriended. But how could she convince the council of this when they were too busy arguing about fleet sizes and weapon yields? While Vreth studied, the hardliner faction grew stronger. Admiral Korveth, who had survived the first battle, had become a voice for vengeance. He spoke of human arrogance, human savagery, human threat to everything the sovereignty had built. He conveniently forgot that he had started the war by attacking human civilians. The hardliners made alliances with other species in the sovereignty. They promised glory, riches, revenge. They argued that humanity was still weak, still limited to one system. If the sovereignty acted now, with overwhelming force, they could still win. They proposed a coalition fleet. Not just sovereignty ships this time, but vessels from every allied species. 2,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in this region of space. Surely that would be enough to crush the humans. The council debated. The moderates argued that this was madness, that the humans had already proven their strength, that sending another fleet would only result in more deaths. The hardliners argued that the first fleet had failed because of poor leadership and bad luck, that with proper coordination and numbers, victory was certain. Vreth tried to speak. She tried to explain what she had learned, but her voice was lost in the shouting. The vote came after 3 weeks of debate. The coalition fleet was approved. Representatives from 8 species agreed to contribute ships. The launch would happen in 4 months. Vreth watched the celebration with growing horror. They did not understand. They could not see what was coming. She had to do something. But what could one counselor do against the combined will of the sovereignty? She thought about it for days. She reviewed her options. She considered every possibility. And finally, she made a decision that would have been considered treason. She would warn the humans. Vreth had access to diplomatic communication systems. She could send a message to Sol System using channels that were not monitored by military intelligence. The message would arrive days before the coalition fleet. It would give the humans time to prepare. She knew the risks. If she was discovered, she would be executed. Her family would be disgraced. Everything she had worked for would be destroyed. But if she did nothing, millions might die. Sovereignty and human alike. The war would escalate until one side or the other was destroyed completely. She sat at her communication terminal and composed her message. She kept it simple. To the human leadership. My name is Vreth. I am a member of the Sovereignty Council. I voted against the invasion of your system. I was ignored. A new fleet is being assembled. 2,000 ships from 8 species. They will launch in 4 months. I am telling you this because I believe this war is wrong. I believe it can be stopped, but only if both sides are willing to try. I do not know if you will trust this message. I would not trust it if I were you, but I had to try. I am sorry for what my people have done. I hope someday we can find a better way. She sent the message and waited. Weeks passed. She heard nothing. The coalition fleet continued to assemble. Ships gathered from across sovereignty space. A massive armada preparing for what many believed would be the final battle. Vreth went about her duties. She attended council meetings. She voted on minor matters. She pretended that everything was normal, that she had not committed an act of treason that could end her life. She did not know if the humans had received her message. She did not know if they believed it. She did not know if it would make any difference. But she had done what she could. The coalition fleet launched on schedule. 2,000 warships, the combined might of 8 species, all directed at one small star system. Commanders gave speeches about duty and honor and the destruction of the human threat. Crews cheered and celebrated. They were certain of victory. Vreth watched them go. She thought about the humans waiting at the other end. She thought about the warning she had sent. She wondered if it had been enough. On Earth, the warning had been received. Human leaders gathered to discuss the message. Some thought it was a trick, a deception to make them lower their guard. Others thought it might be genuine. The debate was intense. Captain Okonkwo was called to give her opinion. She read the message several times. She thought about the sovereignty officers she had fought, the prisoners she had released, the mercy she had shown. I think it is real, she said finally. Someone over there understands what we are. Someone wants to stop this war. We should not ignore that. The decision was made to prepare for battle while remaining open to peace. If the sovereignty wanted to talk, humans would listen. But if they came to fight, humans would be ready. The shipyards increased production. Existing vessels were upgraded. New weapons were installed. Defense stations were reinforced. Every human who could contribute did contribute. 3 weeks. That was how long they had before the enemy arrived. It was not enough time to match the coalition's numbers. But humans did not need to match their numbers. They needed to survive. They needed to show the sovereignty that this war could not be won, and they needed to find a way to reach whoever had sent that warning. Because somewhere in the enemy's ranks, there was someone who wanted peace, someone who understood. Captain Okonkwo thought about Counselor Vreeth often during those 3 weeks. She did not know what the alien looked like. She did not know her species or her age or her history, but she knew that Vreeth had risked everything to send that message. That took courage. That was something humans understood. When the Coalition fleet arrived, they would face the full strength of humanity. They would see what humans could do when their home was threatened, and maybe, just maybe, they would finally understand that this war was pointless. Okonkwo hoped so. She was tired of fighting. She was tired of killing. She wanted peace. But she would not surrender to get it. If the sovereignty wanted peace, they would have to earn it. And that began with surviving what was coming. The countdown continued. The Coalition fleet drew closer, and humanity prepared for the greatest battle in its history. The Coalition fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 warships from 8 species spread across the darkness of space. They were the largest military force assembled in this region of the galaxy for over 500 years. Their commanders believed they were invincible. Grand Admiral Thesson, a towering reptilian from one of the oldest sovereignty species, commanded the fleet. He had studied the reports from previous battles. He knew the humans were dangerous, but he also knew that numbers mattered. 2,000 ships could not lose to a few dozen. The fleet began its advance toward Earth. Sensors swept ahead, searching for human defenses. They found them. 47 human warships held position near the 4th planet, the one called Mars. Behind them, weapons platforms orbited in neat rows. Missile batteries dotted the nearby moons. And beyond everything else, Earth itself was ringed with defensive stations. Thesson examined the readings. 47 ships. The humans had built quickly, faster than anyone had predicted. But 47 was still not 2,000. He opened a channel to the human fleet. Human commanders, you are outnumbered more than 40 to 1. Your defenses cannot stop us. Surrender now, and your civilian population will be spared. Resist, and your entire species will be destroyed. The response came from Captain Sarah Okonkwo. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Admiral, I have heard this speech before. Your predecessor said something similar right before we destroyed his fleet. I will give you the same answer I gave him. We did not start this war. We do not want this war. But if you attack our home, we will defend it with everything we have. You may win, but the cost will be more than you can imagine. Thesson did not bother replying. He gave the order to advance. The Coalition fleet moved forward in waves. The first wave consisted of 500 ships, enough to test the human defenses without committing everything at once. They accelerated toward the human position, weapons charging. The humans did not wait. Captain Okonkwo gave the order and the human fleet surged forward. 47 ships against 500. The mathematics were clear. The mathematics were wrong. The human ships tore into the Coalition, advanced like predators among prey. They moved in perfect coordination, covering each other, creating overlapping fields of fire. Railguns hammered through shields. Energy beams sliced through armor. Missiles swarmed between enemy vessels, seeking weak points with cold intelligence. The Coalition ships fought back. They scored hits. They damaged human vessels. But for every human ship wounded, 10 Coalition ships died. Thesson watched his first wave crumble. 100 ships destroyed in the first hour, 200 by the second. The survivors retreated in disorder, broken and terrified. He committed more ships. 1,000 this time. Surely 1,000 ships could break through. The battle expanded. Coalition vessels tried to surround the human fleet, to attack from multiple directions at once. The humans adapted. They split into smaller groups, each group supporting the others. They used asteroids as cover. They laid traps with hidden missile platforms. They fought with a creativity and ferocity that the Coalition had never faced before. The human ships took damage. 3 were destroyed in the first day of fighting, then 4 more, then 2 more. Each loss was felt deeply by the human fleet. These were not just ships. They were homes, families, friends, but humanity did not break. Captain Okonkwo commanded from the Bridge of the Consequence. Her ship had been repaired and upgraded since the first battle, but it still bore scars from that encounter. Now, it was earning new scars. She watched the tactical display as another human ship, the UES Relentless, exploded under concentrated fire. 300 crew members gone in an instant. She had known the captain. They had trained together years ago. There was no time to mourn. She gave orders, directed her fleet, kept fighting. The battle continued for days. Neither side rested. Neither side stopped. The coalition threw wave after wave at the human defenses. The humans held. Barely. By the 5th day, the coalition had lost 800 ships. The humans had lost 15. But 15 was a larger percentage of their total force. They were running out of ships to lose. Grand Admiral Thesson could see victory approaching. The humans were weakening. A few more pushes, and they would break. He ordered his remaining ships to prepare for a final assault. But something was happening within the coalition fleet. Species that had joined eagerly were now questioning their commitment. They had expected an easy victory. They had expected minimal losses. Instead, they were being slaughtered. Some commanders began to doubt. Some began to talk about retreat. The coalition had never been truly unified. Each species had its own reasons for joining, its own goals, its own interests. They had agreed to work together against a common enemy, but when the cost became too high, that agreement started to fracture. On the 6th day, the first defections began. A contingent of ships from one species simply stopped fighting. They announced they were withdrawing and departed without waiting for permission. Other species followed. Within hours, the coalition had lost 300 ships to defection. Thesson raged at the retreating vessels, but he could not stop them. His fleet was no longer 2,000 ships. It was barely 1,200, and morale was collapsing. The humans sensed the change. Captain Okonkwo saw the enemy formation breaking apart, saw ships fleeing in all directions. She gave the order to advance. The remaining human ships, battered and wounded but still fighting, pushed forward. They struck the disorganized coalition like a hammer. Vessels that had been preparing to attack suddenly found themselves being attacked. The chaos spread. On the 7th day, Grand Admiral Thesson made the decision he had sworn never to make. He ordered a full retreat. The coalition fleet fled from Sol System. They left behind hundreds of destroyed ships, thousands of dead crew members, and the shattered remnants of their confidence. They had come to destroy humanity. They had failed. The humans did not pursue. Captain Okonkwo watched the enemy retreat from her damaged bridge. Smoke drifted through the air. Half her displays were dark. Her ship had been hit dozens of times, but it still flew. She still lived. She opened a channel to the fleeing fleet. Her voice was tired but firm. "You came to our home to destroy us. We defended ourselves. This is over now. Go back to your families. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humans do not want war. Tell them that we would rather be friends than enemies. And tell them that if they ever come back, they will face the same welcome you received." Then she gave another order. Human ships moved to escort the retreating coalition vessels to the edge of the system, not to attack them, not to threaten them, simply to ensure they left safely. The surviving coalition commanders did not understand. Why help enemies escape? Why show mercy to those who had tried to commit genocide? One human officer answered the question when a coalition captain asked it over an open channel. "Because we are not like you. We do not destroy people because we can. We do not kill because it is easy. We fight to protect ourselves. When the fighting is over, we stop. That is who we are." The coalition survivors departed Sol System and made the long journey home. They carried stories of human power and human mercy. They told of impossible battles and inexplicable kindness. They had gone to war expecting monsters. They had found something else entirely. Captain Okonkwo remained at her post until the last enemy ship was gone. Then she sat down heavily in her command chair and allowed herself to feel the exhaustion she had been holding back for days. They had won. Humanity had survived. But the cost had been terrible. 31 ships destroyed. Over 9,000 crew members dead. Stations wrecked. Defenses shattered. Victory had come at an awful price. Okonkwo thought about the message they had received before the battle. The warning from Counselor Vreth. It had helped. Knowing the enemy was coming, knowing their numbers, had given humanity time to prepare. Without that warning, the battle might have gone differently. She made a decision. When the rebuilding was done, when humanity was ready to reach out again, she would find Counselor Vreth. She would thank her. and she would see if the peace Vreth had hoped for was still possible. For now, though, there was mourning to do, and rebuilding, and healing. The stars had never seemed so quiet as they did that night. After the guns finally fell silent, 1 year had passed since the Battle of Sol. The universe had changed in ways no one had predicted. The sovereignty was broken. The coalition that had attacked humanity had collapsed completely within months of the defeat. Species that had worked together for centuries now blamed each other for the disaster. Old alliances shattered. New conflicts emerged. The 12-species government that had ruled the Orion Spur for 3,000 years was tearing itself apart. But humanity had not taken advantage of this chaos. They had not invaded. They had not conquered. They had done something far more surprising. They had reached out. Human diplomatic ships appeared in system after system, carrying not weapons but offers of trade. They brought technology to share, medical supplies to give away, engineers willing to help rebuild. They asked for nothing in return except friendship. At first, the other species were suspicious. This had to be a trick. No one showed mercy to defeated enemies. No one offered help without demanding something. The humans must have some hidden plan, some secret goal. But months passed and no demands came. The humans simply kept helping. They treated the wounded from both sides of the war. They shared food with populations facing shortages. They offered protection to worlds threatened by pirates and raiders. Slowly, suspicion turned to confusion. Confusion turned to curiosity. Curiosity turned to something that looked almost like gratitude. Counselor Vreth watched these developments from her office on the Sovereignty homeworld. She had expected to be arrested after her warning to the humans was discovered. Instead, she had been ignored. The Council had more important problems than hunting traitors. Their entire civilization was falling apart. When human diplomats arrived seeking someone to negotiate with, Vreth volunteered. No one else wanted the job. They were afraid of the humans. Afraid of being blamed for further failures. Vreth was not afraid. She had studied the humans. She understood them better than anyone else in the sovereignty. And she believed, truly believed, that peace was possible. Her first meeting with a human official took place on a neutral station between sovereignty and human space. The human representative was a woman named Dr. Maria Santos, an expert in alien cultures who had spent years preparing for this moment. They talked for hours. Vreth explained the sovereignty's history, its culture, its fears. Santos explained humanity's past, its values, its hopes for the future. They discovered they had more in common than either had expected. "We never wanted an empire," Santos explained. "We just wanted to be left alone. But the universe did not leave us alone. So we defended ourselves. Now we want to find another way." Vreth understood. "My people have always expanded through conquest. It is what we know. It is what we are comfortable with. But conquest failed against you. Perhaps it is time to try something different." The negotiations continued for months. There were setbacks. There were moments when everything seemed about to collapse. Old hatreds and new fears threatened to destroy the process many times. But both sides kept trying. And eventually, they succeeded. The Treaty of Sol was signed exactly 1 year after the Great Battle. It established peace between humanity and the former sovereignty species. It created frameworks for trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense. It was not perfect. No treaty ever was. But it was a beginning. Captain Sarah Okonkwo attended the signing ceremony. She stood in the background, watching as diplomats exchanged documents and made speeches. This was not her world. She was a soldier, not a politician. But she had been invited to witness this moment, and she had accepted. Vreth found her after the ceremony. The alien counselor approached slowly, uncertain of her welcome. Okonkwo had destroyed hundreds of ships from Vreth's people. She had killed thousands of their soldiers. Would she accept a greeting from a former enemy? "Captain Okonkwo," Vreth said carefully. "I am Vreth. I sent the warning before the final battle." Okonkwo studied the alien for a long moment. Then she extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I know who you are. I have wanted to meet you for a long time. Thank you for what you did. It helped us prepare. It saved lives." Vreth took the offered hand awkwardly. Physical contact between species was still unusual. "I had to try. The war was wrong. I could not stop it. But I could give you a chance. You gave us more than a chance. You showed us that there were people on your side who wanted peace. That gave us hope. They talked for a while, exchanging stories from the war and its aftermath. Vreth learned about the human ships she had watched destroy her people's fleet. Okonkwo learned about the political chaos that had nearly destroyed the sovereignty from within. By the end of the conversation, something remarkable had happened. They were no longer enemies. They were not quite friends yet, but they were something. A beginning. 6 months after the treaty signing, Vreth was appointed as the sovereignty's official ambassador to Earth. She was the first alien to hold such a position. Many thought she was not qualified. Many thought she was a traitor who had helped humanity win the war. Vreth did not care what they thought. She had work to do. She arrived on Earth on a spring morning and was overwhelmed by what she found. Humans lived in incredible diversity. Their cities sprawled across continents. Their cultures varied wildly from region to region. They argued with each other constantly about everything from politics to art to the proper way to prepare food. But underneath all that chaos, there was something else. A unity that only appeared when it was needed. A strength that came from working together rather than dominating each other. Vreth walked through human cities and talked to human families. She visited schools where children learned about the war and its aftermath. She attended ceremonies honoring the fallen from both sides. She began to understand what made humans so different from every other species she had known. They chose to be good. Not because they had to, not because it was easy, but because they believed it was right. This was humanity's true strength, not their ships or their weapons or their technology. Their strength was their choice to be better than their worst impulses. The dedication ceremony for humanity's newest ship took place in orbit around Earth. Thousands of people attended, both human and alien. Representatives from 12 species watched as the vessel was unveiled. It was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, designed to travel farther than any human ship had gone before. Its hull was smooth and graceful, a stark contrast to the brutal angles of the military vessels that had won the war. The ship was named Second Chance. Captain Okonkwo gave the dedication speech. She had been offered command of the new vessel but had declined. She was too old, she said. Too tired. This mission needed someone younger, someone with fresh eyes and new dreams, but she wanted to be there when it launched. We built weapons because we had to, she said to the assembled crowd. We fought wars because we had no choice. But this was never what we wanted. We are explorers by nature, builders, dreamers. The universe is vast and full of wonders we have not yet seen. This ship represents what we truly are. Not warriors, not conquerors, just people who want to know what lies beyond the next star. The crowd applauded. Humans and aliens together, celebrating something that would have seemed impossible just 2 years before. Vreth watched from a place of honor near the front. She thought about everything that had happened since the war began. The battles, the deaths, the fear and hatred that had consumed both sides. And then, somehow, the peace that had emerged from all that destruction. Humans were strange creatures. They could be monsters when pushed, but they could also be saints. They could destroy fleets and then heal the wounded. They could win wars and then offer friendship to their enemies. Perhaps this was what made them different. They were capable of both extremes. And they chose, again and again, to reach for the better option. The Second Chance launched that afternoon. It rose from orbit and accelerated toward the distant stars, carrying a crew of humans and aliens working together. Behind it, a fleet of smaller vessels followed, ships from 12 species, former enemies, now partners, all setting out to explore the unknown together. Vreth watched them go. She thought about what Okonkwo had said. We are explorers by nature, builders, dreamers. Perhaps all species were capable of being these things. Perhaps her own people had simply forgotten how. Perhaps the humans could remind them. She turned and looked at the blue-green world below. Earth, home of a species that had terrified the galaxy with one ship, then 11, then 47. Home of people who built weapons when threatened and offered peace when the threat passed. They were remarkable. They were dangerous. And now, they were leading the galaxy into a new age. Vreth did not know what the future would bring. No one did. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Real hope. The kind that came from seeing people choose cooperation over conflict, mercy over vengeance, peace over war. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson. Not with weapons, not with power, but with something much more profound. They had taught them that strength was not about domination. Real strength was choosing to be kind when you could choose to be cruel. It was offering a hand to those who had tried to destroy you. It was building bridges instead of walls. The second chance grew smaller in the distance, becoming just another star among millions. Vreth smiled as she watched it fade. This was just the beginning. The best was yet to come.